Shalom, shalom, shalom. I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak, Wadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect scattered abroad, teaching His word in truth and sincerity. I'm back with another lesson through the Spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. And today we're going to go into the four major empires that were prophesied to come upon the earth before the Lord came back. And this is found in the book of Daniel, where he speaks about these major empires. Now, he speaks about it in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and Daniel, the 7th chapter. So we're going to go into it, and Lord willingly, this lesson's edifying. So this is Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and this is 31. We're going to start at 31. And thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form, therefore, was terrible. This image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part clay. Thou sawest till the stone was cut out without without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and break them into pieces. Then was the iron and the clay and the brass, the silver and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like shaft of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away with no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Right, so this is talking about these four major empires. Now, the first one that is seen is the gold. The gold represents what? The Babylonian Empire that came around 605 BCE and besieged Jerusalem. Right. Also, before that you had the Syrian Babylonian Empire, but for the most part you had the Babylonian Empire, which was the empire that came and took the Israelites, the other Israelites of the southern kingdom, into captivity. Then what you had after that? You had the silver, and he said the silver, the breast and his arms of silver, which represents what? The Medo-Persian Empire, and his belly and his thighs of brass. That talks about what? The Greeks. And it says his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part clay. So you have the legs of iron, which is the Roman Empire, and then you have his feet iron and part clay, which represents Babylon the Great, which is America and NATO and the EU. And it says iron and part clay because it's partially strong and partially weak because of the division that's going to be between Babylon the Great within its own system, but also the allies, right? The NATO and the EU, they're going to begin to divide, which we're seeing now, the division between the allied nations, which we see that even in the ancient Roman Empire, the vassal states that were in Rome, when Rome started to fall, those vassal states started to take over its territory and go against Rome also, right? So we're seeing a repeat, of the vassal states, so to speak, fall out of alliance with Babylon the Great. Now we're going to see it more and more in the future, but just little things we're seeing now. We're starting to see that that's definitely happening, right? So these are the four major empires. Now it speaks about this again in Daniel the 7th chapter, which we'll read. And now when you hear about these four major empires that are being described as beasts now, right? And this is the figurative language that the Bible uses. And, through the Spirit, you have to uncover these things. Now, the scriptures are going to already hint that these are empires, right? So it's not like you have to put too much thought into what these beasts are if you just read the chapter. So this is Daniel 7:1. In the first year of the Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his bed upon a vision of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And the great sea is talking about the Mediterranean Sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. The first was like unto a lion, which we always associate that with the Babylonian Empire, but also you go into the Syrian Empire, and they had like a legion with it was a lion with eagle's wings, right? Or it's a lion or a leopard, and I believe it's called the Lamassu. I think the Assyrians call it the Lamassu, and it was called something different in the Babylonian kingdom. Actually, let me actually go get it real quick. So this is the Lamasu, right? Lamasu is a protective Assyrian deity with a hybrid body combining human, bull, or lion and bird's parts. In ancient Mesopotamia, these winged bulls with human heads guarded cities. Right now, let's see. I know it's called. I think it's different in Babylon. What was this called? I think it's called Lamasu. Let's see. Let me put my phone on the charger real quick. My phone is up dying. Let me see if I can say this. Let's see. Oh, it's Lamasu. I guess it was. I guess it is Lamasu. Lamasu, mythical creature from ancient Syria, depicted as a. It's another one in Yeah, well, I think it is the Lamasu. I think it's called something else too, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, it's pretty much depicting what the Babylonian, Syrian, Babylonian Empire. So let's go back to Daniel the seventh chapter. So you got the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, which is the first recognized empire that Daniel is seeing, or is that Daniel is mentioning. Now, like I said, we understand this. It was different captivities and things that the Israelites went through before Assyrian the Babylonians. But pretty much once the kingdom of Israel became established, and you had the kings, and you had King Solomon and King David. After King Solomon, that's when you get the split of the kingdom, and from there, was the downfall and the many captivities that the Israelites went through after King Solomon. So he says, and the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Behold, till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised itself on to one side, and had three ribs in the mouth of it. Right. So this is talking about what? It's talking about the Medo-Persian Empire. Now it says it had three ribs in the mouth of it, which represents Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt. Also, the three directions. Right. When you go into Daniel 8, and I believe it's 5. Daniel 8 and 5, it says, and as I was considering the behold, and he goat from the west on the face of the earth. It's like it says, as I was considered. It's like it's actually 4. I'm actually started. Let's see. I'm started 4. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. Now this is the ram is talking about what? It's talking about the Medo-Persian Empire. It just depicted as a ram. In Daniel the 7th chapter, it was depicted as a what was it? It was depicted as a bear that was lifted up on one side. That had three ribs in his mouth. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but it did according to his will and became great. Right, and we understand that. We understand what comes next, which is pretty much the Greeks. So it says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of its 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given into it. So this is talking about what? Talking about the Greeks, right? When you go into the Daniel the 8th chapter, it's described as a goat or a rough goat. We understand it's talking about Alexander the Great. But Alexander the Great, he represents what? The Greek Empire, and when they came on the earth and they conquered. Now, when you go into this bear that had 3 ribs, you understand those are the 3 directions or the 3 empires that it subdued. It says, and the mouth of it between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it rise devour much flesh. Right. So the rope the Medo Persian Empire became great, and they became great, or they took over the known empire or the known world, I would say, taking over the Babylonians in 539 BCE. Then you got the Greeks, 331 BCE is when Alexander the Great um, took over or became the dominant power in the region, taking the dominion away from the Medo Persians. Right, 331 Battle Gargamella Arbella. It says, and this after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Right, so the four heads represent what? The 4 generals. Right, you have Seleucid, Ptolemy, Cassander, and Lysimachus. Right, those are the 4 generals that the kingdom got split to, or Alexander's empire got split to. And you had something called the Diadochi Wars, where they went against each other. The main empires that are the main heads that went against each other was the Ptolemies and the Seleucid. Right, Ptolemy and the Seleucids were mentioned more, especially when you go into the first Maccabees. Right, first Maccabees, it goes into Ptolemy, and it goes into Seleucid, or out of Seleucid was the Antiochus, right? They came out of the Seleucid dynasty, and they wore a lot. So you got after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, the 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And what is this talking about? It's talking about what? The Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, it represents the iron in Daniel the 2nd chapter. Now, iron is very strong, and it was mass produced on a wide scale in the Roman Empire as weapons. Right, iron was already used, but it was mass produced, easier to be mass produced in the Roman Empire, and was used heavily in the military. Right. So you have the Roman Empire, and that's why this talks about the teeth. And it had great iron teeth, right? It's representing the military, representing the strength, of their military. And it devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns, right? And the 10 horns represent what? The 10 vassal states, right? The 10 vassal states, and a lot of those vassal states, I believe, were the Germanic tribes that came from the north, and they settled into Rome, and they became vassals to Rome. So a vassal is a pretty much a place that has a bit of sovereignty, but owes its allegiance, its tribute or service to a greater power, right? So though they had different territories in Rome, they pretty much owed that allegiance or their tribute to Rome. So whenever Rome needed them for certain things, especially to fight, they would, be expected to fight. But when you go into the history, after Rome started to fall, you had those vassal states that pretty much start to take over the Roman territories, and it pretty much points to America and NATO and the EU, and how as America falls, you see NATO and EU start to fall out with America more and more and more, because America is making desperate decisions. And also when you look at the scriptures, and it should be further down. Let me actually just read it, right? Because it shows how the look is more stout than his fellows, showing you that the arrogance and the pride that Esau Edom even displays amongst his allies, and this is why that the allies are going to fall out with Babylon the Great. So it says, after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, right? And this is talking about Babylon the Great. See, there are 4 major empires that are going to come on the earth. But if people thought that the Roman Empire was the last empire that was going to come, and then Yahweh Shah was supposed to come, well, they don't understand that little horn is still a part of the 4th beast. So it's still Rome, but it's we call it the revival of the Roman Empire, or the revised Roman Empire, or what we call Babylon the Great, right? Babylon the Great is the revised Roman Empire. So the Lord is going to come, right, within the fourth beast is just the last leg of the fourth beast, right? The deadly wound was healed when we go into Revelations, right? Revelations, the 13th chapter. Actually, I'm going to read that and come back. Revelations, the 13th chapter. So it says, let me see. All right, Revelation 13th chapter says, I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads a name of blasphemy. So we see how Daniel and John, the Revelator, is seeing a beast rise up of the sea, where they're pretty much having the same vision, but they're getting more details in specific areas. Like Daniel is getting, John the Revelator is getting more details concerning the last beast. John the Revelator is getting more details on the last beast. Daniel, he got information on the last beast, but it didn't go into detail like John the Revelator is going on to, right? So it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet was as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So this is pretty much going into that revival, right? The revival, when the deadly wound was healed, the Roman Empire fell around, like say 3, 4, was that AD, somewhere around, I would say the 3rd or 4th century, you could say. And then after that, you had the Dark Ages, the 1,000-year period where Esau was shut up, which it talks about that in Revelation, the 20th chapter. And then it, comes into power after that, after the 1,000 years, which we call it the Renaissance period, the rebirth of Esau Edom, where he uses his deception, right, with iconoclasm and things of that sort to pretty much revamp and destroy all the ancient images, so he can make himself as a god or as a power on earth. And we're still living in that current system, right? We're still living in that current system, but we see right now his system is starting to fall. Right, everything is going down the drain, and so he's coming with his last plans to create that new world order, where you have all people worship him through his image, right, and that MOTB. So this is what's coming on earth right now, but we're still in the Roman Empire, pretty much the revised Roman Empire. And so when people talk about the it's a belief that all the prophecies have already been passed, Salakia, which is called preterism, right? It believes that all the prophecies have already passed, and it happened especially in 70 AD, right? Which is not true, right? Because in 70 AD, it was the Roman Empire, but all the prophecies are not fulfilled in 70 AD, right? So some people look at the fact that the Roman Empire was supposed to be the last empire that was on the earth, not understanding that little horn that came up or the deadly wound being healed was the extension of the Roman Empire. And though the Roman Empire is not on the earth today, its laws, decrees, and the people are still here today's time, and it's being it was revised, or it's revealed, I would say, through America, right, through Babylon the Great, which is America, right? So let's go back to Daniel the 7th chapter. Daniel the 7th chapter, right? It says, I'm gonna go to 7:7, Daniel 7:7. After this, I saw a night vision, and behold, 4 beasts, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured it break in pieces, stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, right? And this is talking about what? The British, the Spaniards, and the French, right? Those are the 3 horns that were plucked up. And it says, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, right? And behold, and this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things, right? And these are the laws and decrees and the things that were pushed against the children of Israel, right? It's just the wicked laws and decrees. Woe unto them who decree unrighteous decrees. So you have all these unrighteous decrees being implemented through Esau Edom, through the Roman Empire, the revised Roman Empire. Right, so you have the iconoclasm, which was a part of the deception that Esau used to forge his own ideology, which pretty much Christianity came out of that, because Christianity was is represented by what Caesar Borgia, who the world calls Jesus Christ, which is the image of what we see as Jesus Christ in today's time, which we understand the true Messiah, the true Hamashiach was Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai was the true Hamashiach. That was his name. He was a so-called black man if we would have seen him in today's time, right? But they changed all those things. They changed they changed the image of the Son of God, God himself, Yahweh, the angels, and the Israelites, right? They made all those people so-called white men. When you look in all these cartoons or you see these old PBS Bible stories, you're going to always see white people representing the Israelites, representing the Son, Yahweh Shai, and the Father, and the angels, right? So this is the mass deception that he used to forge his own ideology into the minds of the people, right? It says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head were like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flames, and his wheels as a burning stream. Right, talking about the Ancient of Days, which is the Heavenly Father, and John the Revelator is seeing all these thrones being cast down. Right, it's a fiery stream issued and came forth before him. Thousands of thousands unto him ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened, and beheld. Then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even to the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given into the burning flame. And this is talking about the destruction of Babylon the Great. It's going to come via nuclear missiles, and also the angels, Yahweh Shai, and the chariots are going to come and pretty much beat the nations to powder, where there's not going to be no more. And it talks about that in second Ezra, the 13th chapter, where these different militaries of the world are going to go and try to subdue the man that came out to sea, which is Yahweh Shai, and they're going to be found no more. So the Lord is going to allow or the angels and the Lord and the chariots are going to pretty much decimate the armies that are going to come against Yahweh Shai. And also it talks about that in Revelations, the 12th chapter. We'll actually get it real quick. It's showing you that these things are spoken about in different books in the scriptures, but it all points to the same events, right? The destruction of Babylon the Great. Revelations 12th chapter, let's see. And this is start at 7, Revelations 12 and 7. And there was a war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found in any more in heaven, right? So Michael is going to come, right? Of course, you got Yahweh Shai, you got the great angel Michael, and Michael also is going to fight for the children of the people too, right? Which is the elect. The angels fought against the dragon. The dragon is what? The Roman Empire, or the revised Roman Empire in today's time. And the dragon fought and his angels, right? So the dragon, the Roman Empire, the revised Roman Empire, with you got you have the NATO in the EU also that's going to be with Babylon the Great. But of course, the scriptures say they're going to turn on Babylon the Great in the last days also, right? So you have all these events occurring in the last days, and that's why we're looking at these different prophecies and the things that are happening on earth, and we're able to show you how it parallels to the scriptures and how these things are going to happen, right? We know in part, we prophesy in part. We can't tell you exactly how everything is going to happen, but whatever the scripture tells us, we're able to dissect it and give you understanding of what's going to happen. We know that the nations are going to go into World War III according to Joel, the 3rd chapter. World War III is punishment of the nations for what the Israelites went through in these different captivities, especially amongst Esau Edom, which is the mortal enemy of Jake, right? He was able to get his lick back pretty much on Jake, and ever since really the Greek Empire, right? You got the Greeks. You had the Hellenization period where they were killing Jake if they didn't worship or become Greek, to be Hellen or Hellenized. And also you have the Greeks and you have the Romans, right? The Roman Empire, which Jake had a big fight against the Romans, pretty much 70 A.D., where the Romans pretty much decimated the Israelites. And after that, the Israelites were scattered into the four corners of the earth. You already had the northern kingdom that was gone since, 720, 722 BCE. Then you had 70 AD, which the southern kingdom was pretty much removed from the land. And after that, that's when we went to we went to Africa for a time, and then the transatlantic slave trade happened, and then we understand the history now. You know what I'm saying? What happened and how we got to Americas, and how our brothers of the Northern Kingdom was already in America, and we pretty much made up in Babylon the Great, right? And so that's what we're seeing in these last days, right? Is the coming together of the both of the kingdoms, right? And you have 12,000 of each of the tribes of Israel. They're gonna pretty much become that one stick again, and is great. Also a great multitude that's going to be joined with them, right? Of the Israelites. You got to emphasize that, because the great multitude is not talking about heathens, right? It's talking about other Israelites that are going to come, from the four winds of the earth, and be joined together with the 144,000. Yep. So we went into the old serpent, and how they were pretty much, or the dragon, and how they pretty much won against, going to go against the heavenly forces in the last days, and they're going to be destroyed. All right. So it's not actual devils or demons, or actually, let me go back to it, because they describe them as what? They describe them as what? Angels, right? So the angels is just talking about Esau Edom's space force and his military, his army that's going to try to subdue Yahweh Shai and the angels and Michael and things of that sort, which is not going to work. All right, so let's go back to Daniel, right? And so that's how we can keep track on these different prophecies, because we understand that we're in the last leg of the Roman Empire. We're in the revised Roman Empire, so we can understand that, hey, this thing is over with. For those who thought the Roman Empire was the last empire, well, it really is. It's just we're just living in the revised part of it now, where the deadly wound was healed. Let me see where I was at. It says, "Beheld there." It says, hold on. It's 11. I beheld them because of the voice. This is Daniel 7:11. I beheld them because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even to the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame, which is the nuclear destruction, and also the chariots of Yahweh Bashim Mashai is going to be evaporating the different armies of the world. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Right, and it's talking about the other nations of people. They're pretty much, they're pretty much going to be preserved to be slaves, right? Right, they're going to be preserved to be slaves. I saw in the night vision and beheld one like the Son of Man came with the cloud of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, which is Yahweh Shai, and there was given unto him, it says, they're given him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages shall serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Right? So pretty much this is when Yahweh Shai is able to get his dominion. When he was crucified, he came on the scene for 40 days and night. He ascended into the cloud, and he was able to, be glorified, get the dominion, the honor, and he was given a kingdom, right, which is the kingdom of heaven, which is coming soon, right? Real soon, the kingdom of heaven is going to be established on the earth, right? But until the full measure of Esau Edom's kingdom is established or is fulfilled, he's going to be in the right hand side of the Heavenly Father, waiting to that decree. Now we understand through the prophecies, we're right here, we're right at the gate where the Lord is going to return. We're right at the gate. We just got a few more things that have to happen. Right now, brothers are really looking for something major to happen right now that's going to have them, bring in the MOTB, or bring in the New World Order fully, because it's the components are there, right? They just need to be able to fully implement it, and they need something, right? They need a disaster. They need something that they're going to bring on the earth that's going to allow them to implement the MOTB system. right? So right now we're seeing the components, we're seeing the technology, we're seeing that they have everything they need. They just need something to be able to, usher in a reason to usher in the new world order, the technocracy, which they're already implementing little bit by little. If you look at these laws and decrees that are being passed, they're already implementing these things. They're already coming with the technology. They just needed a certain event that's going to allow them to put that on the earth. Allow that system, that beast system, to be implemented on the earth, right? And so, you see where Habashai comes, right? He takes that dominion. He gets the glory. He gets the, the honor that all nations and tongues and languages should pretty much worship him, right? Daniel the second chapter. Let's go back to where we was at to finish it up. It says, and there was it says, Daniel the second chapter and 35th verse. It says, then was the iron, the clay, and the brass, and the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain filled the whole earth. And that great mountain is talk about what? The government of Israel, right? The Israelites, the Israelite rulership established on the earth through Yahushua. He's going to come on the earth. He's going to establish that government, that great government, which is the 144,000, which is going to be the governing body of the whole world to come, right? Which is going to be ran out of Israel, right? And this is where Isaiah the second chapter talks about how these different nations are going to come up to that great mountain to be able to learn of the God of Jacob, law, statutes, commandments, and things of that nature. They're going to learn because of the Israelites, being established. The immortality, the laws, decrees, and everything that goes with it is going to be established on the earth when the elect are beamed up into the chariots and they come down, right? Yahushai, which is the king. You have 12, right? The 12 apostles. You have the 144,000, right? You have the whole government, pretty much of rulers and judges that's going to put this world back into its proper order, right? So let me. I'm gonna go down a little bit, right? Because it's breaking down these different things. But let me go down. I'm gonna jump down to 40. Daniel 2:40. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with murky clay, right? I was talking about how it goes into the division. As the toes of the feet were part of the iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partially strong and partially broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with murky clay, they shall mingle themselves with seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms and shall stand forever. Right? So, in the fourth beast, the revised Roman Empire, when it comes on the scene, it's going to be destroyed, and then that's when the kingdom should be not left to other people. Now, so the heathen have a time to be able to rule, right? The Lord said He rules in the kingdom of men, so He gave all these different nations a time to rule for a period of time, right? And after they're given their measure of rulership, He takes it from them, right? And in this age, right, which is the Roman Empire, and He allows Israel to rule on the earth forever and ever. The kingdom should not be left to other people. None of you nations are going to rule on alongside of the Israelites. You're going to be subservient, going to be the servants of the Israelites, and then eventually you'll get your prospective lots to rule, and do you guys' thing. Of course, under the law, statutes, commandments of the Lord, right? You're going to learn the ways of God, right? You're going to have to go up to Israel to worship and give tribute and things of that sort to the Israelites, right? So just going into Daniel the seventh chapter, Daniel the second chapter, and how the scriptures give us everything we need to know. They give us all these different kingdoms. Of course, we wouldn't have known this, or even the prophets wouldn't have known exactly what was going on in the times that they were giving these prophecies. But what would have to be understood by the prophets in today's time. The true prophets were able to break these things down because the scripture says knowledge have increased, right, in Daniel 12th chapter. So that knowledge increased, and so the understanding became more vivid in these times, right? Because they were speaking of visions that were far off, right? What does it say? The vision is for the appointed time. It shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait. It shall surely come. It shall not tarry. So pretty much the visions that these prophets were having were pretty much meant for us in today's time to be able to uncover them and make the sense of these different prophecies, right? Because they wouldn't have known exactly what was going on. They only can use whatever language they use, like they use a lot of figurative language to explain things that were happening in the future. And so now we can look at that figurative language and understand exactly what's going on, and via the Holy Spirit through our teachers, right, giving us the understanding of what these things mean. All right, so with that, I'm going to give all glory and honor and praises to Yahweh Shai. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying, and shalom to next time.